Peace, y'all. Before we get started, I felt compelled to remind everyone to stay safe and stay abreast of all the atrocities happening around the world. The people of Palestine, Tigray, Congo, Sudan, Haiti, and countless other territories are currently fighting for their rights and their lives. And if you're choosing to take action, please take every precaution you can. Stay hydrated, stay in groups, cover your face, and please, more than anything, don't lose hope. I've been leaving links to organizations and resources at the bottom of every episode description for a good minute, so please go check those out for places to donate and to find ways to take action today. We're not free until all oppressed people in the States and abroad are free. Much love, stay strong. Now let's keep this shit moving. What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is New Jersey author, former photographer, and event coordinator T. Eric Monroe. We spoke about Family Guy, Freakazoid, and the edifying power of cartoons, his relationship with Boyz in the Hood and Menace to Society, growing up in the suburbs of New Jersey, how attending skateboarding events led him to photography, stories behind extremely rare rap photos from his collection, and the creative process behind the collector's edition of his book, Rare and Unseen Moments of 90s Hip-Hop. Come fuck with us. What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back to a nice little Friday edition of Real Notes. You're not hearing this on a Friday, but you're gonna hear it on a Wednesday, or if you get it early, it's on a Monday. But we're recording on Friday, 4 p.m. It's beautiful and sunny in November. Feels kind of weird, but it's nice and kind of terrifying. But my name's Dylan Green, CineMasai. Got a lot of names, do a lot of shit, outside, inside, all sides. For anybody who may or may not know, Hearing Things is new. It's out there. We've been going for a couple weeks. Come check us out over there at hearingthings.co and Hearing Things Co. On all social platforms. We just put out a podcast today called Waste or Taste that I'll be on next time. But family's cooking over there. But today we're cooking with somebody else who's been a real pillar of hip hop photography over the course of the last few decades. Like a fellow Jerseyite, somebody who's really contributed to this culture that we all know and love in some beautiful ways. His name's T. Eric Monroe. He's in the house with us today. Rare and Unseen Moments of 90s Hip Hop is out now. The book, y'all can't see it, but I'm holding it in my hands. It's full of rare archival photos of every icon of the 80s and 90s and early 2000s you could possibly think of. We'll get into names later. But T-Dot, thank you so much for being here. It means the world to be talking to you today.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you in your public. It's an honor to be on your podcast. Speaking with people.
Thank you, man. And yeah, like especially as a fellow Jerseyite, grew up in Montclair, Essex County, 973-908. I'm in Clifton now. So I'm I was telling peace to Rodney for connecting us, Rodney Corsi over at Garden State Hip Hop.
Yes.
Once again, Jersey affiliates. I'm always gonna go out of my way to platform people from the area on my thing. So this was just divine intervention.
Indeed.
So I'm gonna start this off by asking the first question I ask everybody who comes on here, which is what was the last movie or TV show you watched that you had a strong opinion about?
Oh wow. Movie, I can't think of the last movie I saw. TV show. TV show. Other than football, probably Family Guy, because I really don't watch too much TV. In my opinion on it, I just like Family Guy because it's a cartoon. The way that they're able to deal with public issues of the public in any way that they really want to get away with, they do, and they sort of push the needle. That's what I enjoy about the entertainment of shows like Family Guy.
Yeah. So I'm actually happy you brought this up because my partner and I just started rewatching Family Guy maybe about 2 weeks ago.
Right.
It was because they put out a new Halloween special, and we were both like, you know what? It's I think the last time I watched a new episode of Family Guy had to have been close to maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Right.
So we just tried it on a whim, and I was like, it's it's like I feel the way about Family Guy that I do about like modern Simpsons, where like there was a period of time where everybody stopped watching, and it was like just kind of like universally agreed that the shit was whack.
Right.
But you know, you go back and you watch some of the newer stuff, and it's like they found a new rhythm. The show, it kind of has a different energy than it used to. Like
Right.
Family Guy in particular, like it doesn't feel like the old stuff at all. But you know, it's pretty funny. You know,
Yeah.
like I feel you. You know, like I first started watching the show when I was like way younger. Like we
Right.
had I had a homie who had the DVDs, and we just ran through those. You know, like scripture for a long time, and you know, it's so I gotta ask, how long, like have you been watching it consistently from the jump, or did you leave
No.
for a few years and come? Yeah, okay. Tell me about it.
I watch it whenever it happens to be on, and I just need background noise filler. So it's
Yeah.
just, it's not like, oh, I gotta watch. If it happens to be on and I'm, you know, scrolling through TV, I'll put it on as background filler. It's not like I have to watch it per se. And I can't remember if I ever watched it when it was on. I think it comes on Sunday night when it comes on. It was one of those things that's kind of like reliable TV when nothing else is on. At least you can put it on in the background, or even if you really want to watch it, and you can still do something else. And once in a while, you'll catch a joke, you'll catch an inside joke, you'll catch did they really say no? Or did it, you know, it's one of those moments you're sort of just, your ears kind of open while you're doing something else, and they'll, you know, throw a curveball in there like they just got away with that, or how many people's head did that, you know, that line really go over, kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, like it's like I'm that way with a lot of just like cartoons generally, whether they're meant for kids or adults. Like I'm a big cartoon person, so like it could be background noise. Like I've been telling myself for, I want to say the last 6 months, like I'm gonna start Adventure Time, I'm gonna start Steven Universe, I'm gonna just like run through the whole thing and get like and like really take in the whole thing as an experience. But like I'm also just like, if I can't think of nothing else, like I also don't watch a ton of TV. Like I have my handful of shows that I come for, but like like Family Guy is kind of coming back into my rotation. I'm a huge Simpsons fan. I'm a huge Futurama fan. Like just any sort of show in that vein. Like I'm a tap like that's comfort for me. Like I'm gonna throw that on and just it'll be cool. So like
because one interesting thing about cartoons is you have to realize that they're made by adults. You know what I mean? So as much as like it's, you know, say, oh yeah, this is a kid's cartoon, because even on I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember when the channel Boomerang first came out, whatever, and they were playing all the Hanna-Barbera classic cartoons or whatever, and I'm trying to remember referencing like, oh yeah, I remember watching this as a kid, or I remember watching that as a kid, but with adult eyes, you see something completely different. Like you get the jokes completely different. Like everything that you don't perceive as a child, you get as an adult, because again, these are adults making cartoons. So it's just like, whether it's political jokes, whether it's like religious jokes, whatever it is, like they're able to slide it under the radar of a cartoon.
Yeah, and like that takes skill. You know, you got to be clever to be able to pull that type of shit off, and that's something I've always appreciated. Like Boomerang was something that I grew up with. Like I was like I'm a '92 baby, so like when Boomerang was first popping, that was like I had to have been maybe like barely 10 years old, but like that's how I got all my old stuff. Like that's how I was watching like Tom and Jerry and Yogi Bear and like all the Hanna-Barbera stuff. Like, all the obscure shit too. Like you can go like in like like go over to like the Herculoids and like all like the
seriously,
weird.
those were so dope back in the day, bro. Like
yeah, man.
And it's amazing because you even mentioned Tom and Jerry, and the genius for me of Tom and Jerry is 99.5% of Tom and Jerry's there's no talking. It's all music based, you know, on classical music. And then there's, you know, that 0.5% where Tom might say a really random thing or almost a racist thing, because there was a lot of racism undertones and a lot of things, and the mammies and the this and that. But for the most part, the cartoon was based off of music, and that's how I learned, or my ear became very familiar with classical music. So even when I was in school, you know, whether it's elementary school, high school, and you're in the band or the orchestra, you're like, oh yeah, I remember this from Tom and Jerry, or oh yeah, I remember this riff from Tom and Jerry. You know, all these how they just use music to illustrate or to speak for this cartoon that was going on in front of you.
Oh man, yeah, like between like Tom and Jerry, and of course like the Disney Silly Symphonies and like old
Right.
Looney Tunes, like all of that stuff. Like there's like a whole episode of Looney Tunes that's like it's a parody of a specific opera. I forget which one, but it's the one where like Bugs and Elmer are on the stage and
Yes, yeah.
he's the Viking. Yeah, like it's classic. Like that.
It's on the tip of my tongue. It's gonna come back in a second, but I
Yeah,
know
same.
exactly
Yeah.
what you mean. And one other cartoon that stands out, and I'm gonna probably go back at some point, and hopefully, because Google listens and TV and Google worked as one, like the
Yeah.
Animaniacs.
Oh,
That show was so in your face with so much stuff, and they're just like, "Oh, we're just cute little kids, bye,"
yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, man, I loved Animaniacs growing up. I still do. Like I've gone back and watched a bunch of episodes and like stuff like that. And you remember Freakazoid? Did you watch Freakazoid when it was out?
I don't think so.
Okay, so Freakazoid was from the same team who made Animaniacs. It was
Okay.
about this kid. It was about this kid who he was like a tech geek before that was like a thing that everybody knew what it was.
Right.
And he like, I don't know if he has like a magic computer or like something, but like he downloads some sort of virus that sucks him into his computer and downloads all information on the internet into his brain.
Wow.
But instead of turning him into this like omniscient kind of like Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen type of superhero,
Right.
it turns him into like a walking meme. Basically, he's like a walking cartoon character. He's got blue skin, jet black hair with a white stripe through it, like the Bride of Frankenstein.
Right.
And like he just walks around making like references to old movies. He's a superhero, so he's got powers, and like the whole thing is like him, just like he's Freakazoid. Like,
wow.
If you can find it, like
yeah.
like go find it. If you like Animaniacs, like I'm so mad because Freakazoid's not on streaming. And I can't find the DVDs nowhere.
Oh wow!
And like it's something that I've been like every once in a while I go and check, like, did they put Freakazoid on streaming? But like anybody listening, like go find Freakazoid. It's one of the coolest 90s cartoons you'll ever watch.
I'll check for it. And, again, because of Google, and we're using Meet, which is owned by whatever.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll get a scroll like, oh yeah, Freakazoid on blah 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 blah, or check out this random site for Freakazoid.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. Excuse me. So let me ask, I want to take it all the way back with you for a second, since you were already talking about just kind of having that connection with Tom and Jerry and the music. What's the first movie experience you can remember having? It could be at the theater, it could be at your cousin's house, like just the first. It doesn't have to be the very first one, but just the first thing that comes to mind for you.
The first thing I'm going to say is Close Encounters of the Third Time, because I'm old enough, I was around when it came out.
Right.
I can't remember when or where, so I feel like I was at a drive-in movie theater. So that's like back in the 70s, where you went in with your car and you put the speaker on your window and you watch the giant screen from your car. That one's the first thing that popped in my head when you said it. The second thing that popped into my head was the movie, and it was a TV movie called Blackula. So it was like the Black Dracula or whatever. And I remember it being so real that it fucking scared me. Because I'm like, yeah, of course, if it's real, it's gonna be real if it's a black man.
Right. That's funny as hell. I gotta ask, where was there a drive-in movie theater in Jersey? Because I've been to like 2 in my life, and neither of them were in Jersey.
So back in the 70s, I want to say it was on Route 1. My geography could be wrong, but my gut says it was on Route 1 in like North Brunswick, where it doesn't exist at all now. Okay. I can Google and research, but I feel like it was somewhere in North Brunswick on Route 1. There was possibly one. Yeah, that's where I feel like it is. If anything, this is purely just pulling it out of my ass or out of the air, or wishing that it would probably be where Walmart is right now on Route 1 in North Brunswick. But I don't know if that's possible. But I feel like it was that relatively close to where I live, so that's why I'm just guessing it was over there. But there was a couple back in the late 70s. I don't remember where the other ones were.
Man, yeah, because at this point, the only one in our area I could think of, they opened one in Newark during the pandemic, which I never got to go to.
Right.
But I love like the handful of times I've been, I love the drive-in. I love the experience. I love like it's just like going to it's like the ritual of going to the movies. Like
Right.
I'm like that's my whole thing. I'm the like I go to the theater every chance I get. Like I have the memberships that get you like the X amount of movies for a month. Like
Oh wow.
I'm that dude.
Right.
But like there's just something special about like being in the car with people and like putting the speaker in and
Right.
watching it on the big, you know, you're all experiencing it at the same time,
Right.
but you're doing it like in like a more intimate setting. You're
Right.
you're not sitting next to 10 people. You're sitting next to like 3, maybe 4 people in one car
Totally.
or however many. Obviously there are hella people like bringing, you know, like sneaking in like dozens of people, you know, like that's just how it
Right.
was. But, you know, like I just like, there's something about that experience of the drive-in that I wish I got to experience more as a kid, but I relish it every chance I get. It's so rare, you know. So I just yeah,
it's trippy to think back when, you know, we're talking like the late 70s. So you had like the drive-in movie theater. You had other movie theaters that might have had on average, an average movie theater may have had 2 screens. Like the mega place might have had up to 10, but that's in such a random market or area.
right.
To the point now where we are with technology, and literally within your phone, you have a movie theater, you have a library, you have like so much technology in the palm of your hands. It's almost
Mm-hmm.
trippy now, you know, but it's just, that's how fast technology moves in a matter of
Yeah.
what, 30, 40, 50 years.
And it's even faster now, you know, like like stuff that would take a decade or two can now like innovations are happening in like, you know, like 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Totally.
Like
And
so
yeah,
sometimes not even that slowly. It's
right.
kind of,
And it's
you know,
bonkers because even like a movie, like let's say for example, like I mentioned, like the first one that popped in my head was Close Encounters,
counters.
and
Yeah.
like the science fiction element, or the, not science fiction element, the what do you call it, the video elements of what's the word I'm looking for, like the light and sound, like sort of like Star Wars special effects, I'm sorry.
Special effects. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
you're
like
good.
special effects from the late 70s and early 80s compared to the special effects that you can do now, even on your phone, and editing a clip. Like it's mind blowing what you can do now. And like I don't even want to talk about
Yeah.
AI because I don't know enough about it, but it's
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
the vividness of possibility and pushing, you know, what you can possibly do. Like it just, it's an amazing place to be right now because you don't have to wait for a team of people to try and do something. You can edit it down, you can create it on your phone or on your laptop or your pad, and you know, creation comes from inspiration. So you can try and do, and you know, you can even sublet, like not instance, yeah, engineers or illustrators or whatever on apps like Fiverr, you know, someone on the other side of the country who can
Yeah, yeah,
draw
yeah.
or create something for you in a matter of minutes for a matter of dollars. Like we're at such a point now where creativity, it's possible to do anything, you know, even to come back around, as easy as it was for me to even publish my own book. It's a matter
Right.
of having a team of people, whether it's on hand or other side of the world. I have the idea, the imagination, I have the, you know, forward thinking ability to do it. So therefore I can do it. You know, there's no reason why I should have to wait and get hung up on, oh, one day when someone gives me this contract or this opportunity. No, it's like with anything in creativity, just do it, start working on it, keep working on it. And like the more you work on it, the better you get at your craft, the more people and eyeballs you can get on it, and the more people you can get, whether it's their opinion or ideas to help you shape your craft, or it's sourcing or outsourcing the right persons to make whatever it is that you want come to fruition to be able to share it.
Yeah, 100%. Like you know, like I really do want to get more into like the process of like putting the book together. But what you were saying just reminded me of a section from it, the section where you were talking about like experimenting with slide photography on your own,
Right,
and just like how, you know, like it would be different than working with like a film camera, like you would like. There was a difference between you shooting stuff for Thrasher like professionally, quote
right,
unquote, and then like doing it with slide photography and being able to experiment and work around with like, you know, like lighting and like maybe not necessarily using filters or flashes, and just like,
right,
you know, you really being like, I was able to really like define my style a little
right.
bit and like kind of find myself in all of this based on that. Like I loved reading that section of the book, especially as it pertained to you just like if I remember correctly, the first one of these stories that really stuck out to me was the one about you, Ladybug Mecca, and Guru, when you
You're
were in
right.
the studio with them in Diggable Planets, and just like seeing yeah, like there's like I said, there's so much I want to get into there, but I had like one or two more film related questions to
Yeah,
get to
let's
before we
just talk.
do
We're
that.
talking, man. I got nothing to do.
Hell yeah. So as you get a little older and you start having more life experiences and kind of like expanding your palette, I like to think of this as like a capital M movie. Like, what was the first movie you saw, or one of the earliest movies you saw that really connected with you in like an emotional or artistic or spiritual sense, like in like more than just as like 90 minutes of entertainment type shit?
Oh, shit. That's a good question. There's a couple of them, but the first one that I would choose to talk about would be Boys in the Hood, and
Mm,
specifically the reason why. Like I remember, I guess I went to a movie theater to see it. Yeah, I had to have, but I remember when the movie was over, going back to my friend's house. Like it was like a flop house. Like my friends, they're in this band called the Bouncing Souls, and everyone used to just hang out their house on the porch or whatever at night. We drink Olympia beer or Country Club 40 or whatever, and just sit around and BS. But I remember after seeing that movie, going over their house, and typical, we'd walk down, to the bodega down the street or whatever, get our cheap little beer, come back and hang out. But I remember going to the bodega that night, and I'm like, "Fuck drinking a 40 ever." I was like, I'm not doing it." But I remember like it's like you're wasting so much money on some bad poison that's really going to f you up. And I'm like it just stuck in my head, like that image of 40 being so prevalent in that movie, and
yeah.
just not good for you, and just that whole stereotype that went with it. I was just like, I'll never drink a 40 again. But I remember that night going, I probably got, how I don't know, like you name it, cheap beer instead of getting a 40, you know what I mean, for the same amount. But it was just that stuck to me in terms of how it hit home. Um what will be another movie that was significant?
Sorry to cut you off. Are you talking
Yes,
about Menace to Society? Because you said Boys
that's
in
what I
the
said. Yeah, Menace to Society. I'm sorry.
Hood. No, no, no.
Sorry.
I
They all
just, I
blend
just,
together.
I just wanted to make sure, because I'm thinking like the one drink I remember like really sticking in my head from Boys in the Hood was when Morris Chestnut was on the street
Drinking
drinking
milk.
the carton of milk.
Oh, come on. Yeah,
I think about that shit all the time.
we're lactose intolerant people. You ain't drinking no milk in the hood. Stop it.
Nah, man, but that's funny. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off. I
it's
just
all
wanted to
good. It's all
clarify.
good. But yeah, I messed with the movie, but it was of that same era or whatever.
Right, absolutely.
I'm not sure what other movie like really stuck out. Yeah, that's the main one. Like just being so pivotal and so such a strong message where it's just like, yeah, you got to change gears of what you're doing repeatedly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, like the Hughes brothers of I actually just got the Criterion collection put out their own version of Menace to Society with like a bunch of special features, and they
Oh
remastered
wow.
it and a bunch of stuff. So like that's a movie I try to watch. I don't watch it super often because it's like really heavy and super depressing and really sad, but
Right.
it's like the message is very powerful, like the performances are all great, and I don't know, man. Like it's a lot of gems to take from it.
Yes.
It's a very pretty movie, really beautifully shot.
Yes.
Like the opening scene of them in the shop when they get when they wind up killing the clerks behind the counter is just like it's harrowing, and it's like really like upsetting, but it's like really well shot. Like you could
Yes.
like that was just an incredibly well directed scene. And I think about, like one thing I really appreciate about that movie as I've gotten older, outside of like everything you just said, is like there's so many cramped spaces they shoot in there. Like it's a lot of like dingy house parties and like inside rooms, like bedrooms, and like like it's a very tightly shot movie in a
Right.
lot of ways. Like they really emphasized, like even when they're out in the street, like it really does feel like a box. It
You're
feels
right.
like a cage, I guess. Like it really does feel like they really put the emphasis on like this is the trap.
Right.
Like, like in
Quite
a
literally.
yeah, in a really visceral, like they just, I don't know, man. That movie is something else. I could talk about that movie all day.
Right. And one thing that's also interesting, and I feel like I know with me it went over my head back then, but to look at it over the last 20 years, where what's his name? what's his what, I can't think of his name. The father, what was it? Luce? Not Luce. What was Ice Cube? No, not Ice Cube. Morris was not one. The other guy, the father figure. It's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, what's it?
From Menace or from
Yes.
Boys in the Hood?
Menace.
Oh man, like his grandfather?
No, the father. He was the real estate agent.
Not father. I don't remember.
When he was talking about gentrification.
Oh yeah, that's Lawrence Fishburne, and that's Boys in the Hood.
Okay, so Lawrence Fishburne, Boys in the Hood. So that's where I was going. But how he was talking about gentrification back then, and then how over the last 20, we'll just say the last 20 years in every major city, it became a real thing where people are just buying, like letting the real estate value go all the way down, and people are just buying up plots and then outpricing everyone. You know, and it's that, and sure enough, that's what exactly happened in so many cities.
There's a there's a rapper I love. His name's Denmark Vesey. I don't know if Denmark's listening, but shout out to him. He's amazing. He put out a project maybe about close to a decade ago called Martin Lucid Dream, and he samples part of that speech in one of the songs. And that was I had seen Boys in the Hood by then, but it took me a little bit to realize that he pulled it from that scene. And then I was watching the movie again, and I was like, oh shit, I don't know why it didn't connect at first, but Lawrence Fishburne's character was Furious Styles. That was his name. Furious Styles. And so like that was like their dynamic in that movie was like, that's still my favorite thing Cuba Gooding Jr.'s ever done. Like that's like he was incredible. He was incredible in that. Like of course the scene at the end when he's just like when he hops out the car before Ice Cube and them go and find the people who've he's just in the house and just like he just breaks down. It's a really really crushing shit. Like both Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society are these like they're like they feel so timeless, and they shouldn't like and I feel like a big part of the point is that like this shouldn't be timeless. Like this is like or like not even that it shouldn't be timeless, but it's just like this is what's happening right now. I hope you can find your way out of this. Yeah. And it's both really great and really sad that those movies are as relevant and relatable as they are. It's been, upwards of 30 years.
Which is crazy.
It's like, very wild. Good movies. I love them both a lot.
Absolutely.
So let's do the same thing with music for you before we get into photography.
Okay.
When did music become capital M music for you? Like not even just like when did it go from being like a passive? Was it ever a passive thing in your life? Like when did music really come into your life?
I mean, it was always passive to me, where it was always sort of background music, because in my house, my parents really didn't listen to music in the house. Like it wasn't like my house was not the cool black house where my mother was listening to this and my father was listening to this and my uncle was, no, but we were very I don't want to say boring, very basic middle class black folks in the suburbs, where my mother was a teacher, my father worked for the federal government. The only music we really heard was whatever came on TV, if you would, or if it was a performance on the weekend on a show called Solid Gold, or American Bandstand, or Soul Train, or I remember as we got a little older, my brother and I had a stereo downstairs where our TV was. And every so often, we turn it to WBLS or KISS, which were the two urban stations.
98.7, I'll never forget it.
Yeah. So it's like every once in a while we'd have that on, but music wasn't necessarily prevalent, even in driving in the car with my parents. We really didn't have the radio on most of my childhood. It wasn't a thing. So anytime I heard any new music, whether it was hanging out with friends and they happened to be playing it at their house, that's when I learned new music. And I had such a mixture, especially in my younger years. We're saying like 12 and under. We'd have a group of friends that would listen to everything from like Curtis Blow to like Ozzy Osbourne. So that's like Black Sabbath, and I remember AC/DC's Big Balls record, one of my friends having it, like blasting in his house, like, I've got big balls, and his parents were just like okay with it, and it blew my mind. I'm like, my parents would kill me if I heard someone play this in the house, you know what I mean? But it was such an eclectic group of people that I grew up around, where we just anything that had a good sound to it or a good joke to it or something. We just liked it as music, you know. It wasn't like this versus that. We just listened to every bit of music
Yeah.
that was available for us to listen to. But yeah, early on, like just whatever my friends were playing or what was on the radio or on TV. And then I want to say towards junior high school. So we're talking what grade is junior high? It's like 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah,
I think
sixth,
that's
seventh,
when
eighth
like
grade.
break
Yeah.
dancing for me came out. So you had more, you know, of the early breaking music, if you would, on the radio. I remember there was like end of my 7th grade year, they had a breakdance contest at my junior high school, and I remember like here, and I could still hear Art of Noise beat. I think it was like whoever, I forgot what big breakdance song Art of Noise has, but like different European sounds that became so influential in early hip hop, if you would. But this for me, being in the suburbs, I didn't realize like how much I was taking on, and then by high school. Um, just being around people and people having like a boom box or radio. And like I remember my freshman year in high school playing football and us going to practice, someone had a radio on and they were playing Lottie Dottie, and everyone on the bus to football practice was singing Lottie Dottie, you know, on the bus. And just like, you know, don't push me because like all these songs that everyone could just sort of, you know, sing into kind of thing. So those are like the early portions. And then one thing that stuck out freshman year, I had a music appreciation course of some sort, and the professor, the teacher of the class, was one of these people who he would break down records. So I remember him talking about like we did a whole, I don't know if it was a month on just the Beatles, and he was breaking down like how the Beatles started, and then he got into Sergeant Pepper's the Sergeant Pepper album, breaking down the album cover artwork, breaking down the little bits and pieces of like, oh, is Paul dead, and like all these different things he would break down and within a record. And I think like listening to him talking about music and like almost like conspiracy theories kind of thing, kind of like open up something in the back of my head or whatever. And then like he would play all different kinds of records, but he just gave you an appreciation to really look beyond just the poppiness of a song, like really look in deep dive into music. And I think that just opened up something in me. And that again was in 9th grade. So I just appreciated music across the board, you know, in my early years.
Yeah, yeah, you know, like as a kid from Jersey in the suburbs, I can relate to that a ton, outside of the fact that like my father was a musician. So like music's always been in my house, like from the time I was young, you know, like I'm like both my parents love music. Like my mom had her taste that imprinted on me, and my dad had his taste, but like my dad was like, he was a roller skater and he was a singer. So like he was an entertainer in he is, excuse me, he's still here with us, thankfully. Like he you know, he was an entertainer in every facet. So like music was like, music is always playing, you know, like he's about to be 80 next year, but like he's always the person who's like, he wants to know what's new. He's like in on like, you know, like he had like he's like tapped into like the Spotify playlists, and like I put him on to stuff. He's like, it's so I mean, like I have like, so like my father, I mean, like his background, like he loves rock stuff. He's like, but like his specialty is more like doo-wop and soul and R&B and like really, really early hip hop. Like he was probably in his 30s or 40s when breakdancing was first a thing. So like he would like tell me stories about that. And like my mom was more like the pop, easy listening, like early rock stuff. Like my mom's a huge Aerosmith fan, really big Sting fan. You're listening to like a lot of that stuff coming up. And you know, it's like whatever she would find. And like, you know, so like it was so like I also kind of listening to like I would glean a lot of stuff from movies, a lot of stuff from TV shows. Video game soundtracks were huge for me. Like totally. like I got huge into dance and electronic music through stuff like Jet Set Radio Future and like all those really cool games. Like the Tony Hawk soundtracks put me on to so much punk and rock stuff that I wouldn't have heard about until years later. And like a lot of underground hip hop. Like that's kind of like where my love for underground rap started. And you know, like of course, like my dad was playing 98.7 Kiss FM and 101.9 smooth jazz. Like so it was a lot of different kinds of music coming at me, like coming at me at that point. But like it was you know, like, and then on top of that, you have friends, and like friends put you on to different stuff all over the map.
Totally.
Like shout out to all the homies who put me on to music over the, you know, it's like between that and college, it's, I don't know, like it's, yeah, I almost can't really pinpoint when music became important to me, because it was just like from the jump, like
Right.
music was just around everywhere. But now I want to ask about photography. So like, when did, like, even before you started professionally, like when did photography first come into your life?
For me, it was always around. Specifically, I think it started with my father's parents. They always had cameras at their house, and then at some point, our house, meaning my parents, myself, my brother. I think my grandparents sort of just left cameras behind, if you would. And then as growing up as kids, you know, I had the simple point and shoot cameras, so I would take pictures at family events, at, you know, holidays or whatever. If we had company over or it was an event at the house, you know, I would just take the, you know, point and shoot camera out and always take the picture for whatever reason. And then as I got older, I would always take a camera, whether it was to school every so often, if it was a special event going on. I remember always having a camera on hand, you know, at different Boy Scout events to take pictures of whatever randomly, not for a specific purpose. But I always felt, looking back, I guess, I just like taking pictures of moments, and I didn't have a reason why. I just did. It was sort of second nature.
Yo, my fault. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to shout out the all new Real Notes Patreon page real quick. If you're looking for ways to connect and directly support the podcast, the Real Notes Patreon is the best way to do so. For as little as $5 a month, you can gain early day before access to every forthcoming episode of Real Notes, as well as an invite to the Real Notes Discord server, where you can talk to others about the latest and greatest in movies and music, come through for some listening sessions, and talk about whatever else is on your mind. I know I'm gonna be talking a bunch. If you feel like coming up off a little bit more, you could get cool exclusive content like audio from Real Notes Live and Real Talk interviews. Those will be exclusive to patrons and ticket holders moving forward. Access to retro versions of my 60-second Minute Maid movie reviews, and even a monthly writing and podcasting workshop hosted by me. Regular episodes will still be available on a weekly basis anywhere you get your podcasts, but if you want the extras, you gotta come out them pockets a bit. Check us out at patreon.com/realnotes. That's REELNOTES. I appreciate your consideration and support more than you know. Now let's get back to talking.
And then as I got into skateboarding, going to skateboarding events and wanting to take pictures of the professionals that were at the skateboard events or whatever, to be able to share those pictures with my friends, or just capture moments that were happening in front of me. So it was just always a part of my process.
That's hard. So what was your first non-point and click, like what was your first, for lack of a better word, like fancy or expensive camera that wasn't just like a little disposable, you get 27 flashes and it's done camera?
Oh, I know what you're saying. My first real camera that lasted me for years, and I had it for years, was a Canon 8U1 program, and it wasn't anything fancy, but you focus the camera and you handle the shutter speed. And there was no real bells and whistles to it, but you just had to have those two things aligned in order to take a picture or whatever. And even with that camera, I'm not sure if it was a hand-me-down from my grandparents. It had to have been a hand-me-down, because I can't remember. When did I actually buy a camera? Yeah, because I even started my quote-unquote professional career on that camera, and then I got a little bit more advanced where midway through my career, I got a Canon T90, which was a little bit more advanced of a camera in terms of you still had to do your own focus and shutter speed, but it gave you a few other options. I think when you looked at it, it gave you a few different options in terms of setting your f-stop based on like where the certain light readings or whatever. So it gave you a little bit more adjustments, but you still had to focus and still do your due diligence in order to take a proper picture. Right. And then after that, it was really those two main cameras that really I shot my career with those two basic cameras. And then along the way, I also had a medium format Yashica mat, which is a dual lens camera that you open up from the top and you look down and into it, and had two lenses on the front. And it's a very old time camera, but it still takes very crisp pictures, if you would.
What's your go-to camera now?
My iPhone. I don't have a modern camera. I didn't
Wow.
continue with photography. Like when I stopped doing photography in '98, I'm trying to think. I had I had one other camera. I can't remember what it was. Some kind of inexpensive like Canon EOS something something something, and I think I used that to shoot a couple weddings or whatever. And I sort of just it's in storage somewhere, but I didn't pick it up to really further photography, if you would. But I never got into the modern age of the digital era. Within the last year, I've borrowed a few cameras to do a few shoots, or rented a couple cameras, like some kind of, and I should have written it down. Like a year ago, I did a really good portraiture shoot for Mark Echo for something for Complex. And I hired a photographer who had literally, I could rent his camera, his lighting equipment, and it was him and this other guy who did my lighting for me. And it's called a Digitech, which I didn't even know that was a thing, where you're basically plugged into a computer as you shoot. So whoever your Digitech is can sort of rebalance your stuff on the fly. And I feel like that's cheating. You know what I mean? But it's the modern age, so it's not cheating. But
Yeah,
I'm used to doing photography from the gut, where when you had to know your stuff that you were shooting, know your light reading, know your parameters of this or that, because you took a picture and you didn't see your stuff until the next day. You know what I mean? And if your stuff wasn't right, you weren't getting hired again. There was no somebody on the side with a computer like, oh, I can just readjust this in here. Like, I'm grateful for it, don't get me wrong, but I learned photography from, you had to know it from your gut in order to continue as a photographer.
Of course. Yeah, no, like that's always going to be different. And like, once that's in you, it's in you, it's not on you,
Right,
like
correct.
that's like you could apply that to any sort of pre-digital, any sort of practice. Like
Absolutely.
That's how a lot of people feel. So I want to come back to this. I want to come back to your relationship with modern photography, but I want to talk about, obviously, like the book and everything else. So like before we even get to your work with Thrasher and all like and like everything that's in here, when did you know that photography was going to become more than just a hobby for you? Like when you like around that time when you were like at the skate parks and doing all this stuff, like when was it like, oh, I'm gonna do this for money?
Well, it was in it was the fall of 1992, when I first started taking pictures of like music artists, and I ran into a photographer who asked me, what am I going to do with this stuff I just shot at this concert? And I didn't have an answer for him. I'm just doing it for fun. I just wanted to see if I can get over and I got a photo pass. I didn't want to deal with the crowd. I wanted to get closer to the stage to enjoy the concert. And then him asked me what I'm going to do with my work. And then I said, well, what can I do with it? And he's told me the options of, you can sell it to, you can offer it to photo stock agencies who potentially could sell your work. You can offer it to here, for him, sort of opening the door of insight and saying, here's some options of what you can do, and which I didn't know were options. Me pursuing those options of ideas of here's what you can do, and getting my foot in the door with a photo stock agency, and them looking at the work saying, you know what, it's not bad. Why don't you try and shoot, try and shoot X, Y, and Z, following up, shooting X, Y, and Z, and then bringing it back, and then them saying, oh my God, you like them being happy with it. I'm like, okay, I have something here. And then from there, within the next month or two, seeing this opportunity of magazines that existed and music labels, and not knowing this entire world that existed, finding out like there's options out here for my photography work to either be sold to, or options of things to photograph. At that point, I was like, you know what? I want to pursue whatever this thing is. I don't know what it is, but it's a lot more interesting, and I want to see what it can be. And I remember I was working at Bristol Myers Squibbs at the time in the production lines, and I was making really great money. I was in the union, great benefits, but I knew that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to pursue whatever this photography thing was to see where it could lead. And I just followed my gut. Like in between, trying to pursue this photography career, I had to work all kinds of like odd jobs, side jobs, whatever, just to finance myself to make it through into the journey that I was pursuing.
Heard that, man. You're preaching to the choir right now. I've definitely been on the work one job and do the thing you love on the side. Like I was doing that for years before I wound up where I think pretty much every creative who didn't just so happen to stumble into success like massive success immediately can relate to everything you just said.
Right.
And I think that factors, like you saying that makes the fact that like you came up at a time when, I mean, like hip hop culture was already pretty established at that point, but I think like editorially and visually it was still kind of forming a bit of its identity by like, you know, like the late 80s, early 90s. And
Right.
you know, like I thought about this a lot while reading, especially over one of the ones that really stuck out to me was the Ghostface and Raekwon shoot for Cuban Links, where you're talking about where it's like the three of y'all and your film camera, and like the specific quote was just like you're talking about the fact that there were no hip hop legends yet, and how
Right.
everything was still kind of being molded, and like, you know, like, and you yourself are being molded by this new vocation and this passion. Like you're still finding yourself in photography. They're still finding themselves in hip hop. Hip hop is still finding its place in the world.
Right.
So like, what was it like kind of finding yourself professionally while also playing a role in helping hip hop bring itself to itself visually, if that makes sense? You know, like it's interesting to see the two of y'all moving together at that point.
No, it's all good. It's weird. It's interesting, because during that time, I don't think I had a wording or voice saying this is what I'm trying to do. It was more of just focusing on that specific moment, trying to capture them to go, you know, for a piece with Thrasher, or trying to, who knows what my outcome was, but it was very focused on just trying to get some really great images of the two of them, you know, together, where I didn't want the yo-yo hands, gun, like I got the gun, some gun, but I knew there was something more. But it was all a matter of like me now looking back at all this work, because during the time everything was in the moment, where I wasn't thinking things all the way out, because I didn't know enough about what it is I was really doing. Meaning that, yeah, I knew Thrasher, I knew the source, I knew a few magazines, I knew labels, but it's like I didn't know the global impact or potential of what I was walking in or through. And probably I was even better because it kept me very simplified in my focus and my purpose of being. Because I think if I would have overthought it, I would have not paid attention to it. I would have been thinking somewhere else. I would have been focused on something else. But being so, I don't want to use the word novice, being so, not immature, just not having enough advice or enough knowledge to get my own way was probably the best thing for me at the time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you kind of need to have that adventurous, like, naive isn't the word I would use either, but it's like
it's close to naive. Like, there's a certain genuine naivete, for a fancier sounding word. In terms of looking back at it now, that was probably beneficial.
Yeah, you know, it's like, you know, like you're bold in that way. Like, you know, like it's different. Like to me, it's a difference between being bold when you're like younger and less experienced, and being bold with experience. Because
Right.
like you know how to, you know, you kind of know how to harness that creative energy and all that experience a little better. I mean, of course, because you have the experience, but you know, like it's just like reading this book, I've been so fascinated by the idea of somebody figuring themselves out creatively while a whole culture is also, you know, like in a lot of cases struggling to establish its identity as like something worth covering in big publications. Like, you know, like I mean like the sources, you know, like not even a decade old at this point. You know,
Right.
like Thrasher, you know, like Thrasher was covering excuse me, hip hop stuff, but like Thrasher was mostly for like the skaters and the punks. And like obviously there's a lot of crossover between hip hop and skate and punk culture.
Totally.
Like that's not to say that they're different or anything,
Right.
but you know,
But
like
no,
it's
your analysis is right on, spot on.
you know, like it's like that's what the you know, like hip hop is at this point where it's like we want to be taken seriously in the same way all these other things are.
Right.
And it's really cool to kind of read and see your thought process of like where you're at and just like your perspective on, and like just and like in a sense, especially it's like we always want to focus on the rappers. We always want to focus on like the people in front of the camera. But like, you know, like I think about this with producers. I think about this with engineers. I think about this with photographers. I think about this with writers. I think about this with everybody involved in the creative process who isn't the musician.
Right.
You know, like there's always going to be more perspective, and more often than not, like a balancing effect that comes from people who experience this stuff who aren't the talent, for lack of a better word, you know,
Right.
like it's so like that's why I appreciated, you know, not just having the pictures, because a lot of these, of course, are like it's in the title, rare and unseen, but you know, just kind of having your perspective. Like one of my favorite stories you tell in here is the photo you took of Tupac and Big and Lil C's and everybody like in the area wearing the Bad Boy t-shirts.
Yes.
And you realized that Pac was giving you the middle finger until you went back and looked at it 15, 20 years later.
Right.
You
Literally.
know, like, which is like, that made me, yeah, you know, like that just had me rolling, because, you know, you're talking about, like, you know, like you're saying, like, you're not necessarily living in the moment. You're just kind of like, oh, somebody asked me to take a picture. Let me just do it real quick and not even think about it. And then,
right.
you know, just to have that hit you in the chest later on, like, oh shit, like I photographed like two of the most famous rappers who ever lived, you
right.
know, like just randomly. And
right.
I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think twice about it. So, you know, like that's just one of the many things about this book that's super fascinating to me.
Awesome.
You know?
Yeah, I appreciate it, because back then, whether it's the Tupac Biggie photo and not knowing who they were in the moment that they were photographed, or not really knowing much about it, even within the year after I shot the picture and wrote, you know, Tupac middle finger on the slide, and I couldn't use it because magazines wouldn't run, you know, a middle finger, and even some
Of
sites
course.
now won't run a middle finger. But
Yeah.
going back, you know, when, you know, 2012, 13, when I was first sorting all my stuff and trying to just put it in order to see what I had, and noticing there was Biggie and Tupac in a picture together, like that in itself, like just blew my mind. And I remember just laughing that all these years I never even knew this picture existed, you know?
Yeah. And it's yours.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes it so amazing, is that it's yours. It's not like you found, it's not like somebody else had the reel and they were like, oh, T-Dot took this picture that I'm not going to tell them about and post it and be like, look at this picture we have.
Right.
You know, like it's yours. Like you have it and you have control of, like, that's so dope. I just love that.
It's fun,
you know?
And it was interesting, like early today, or I don't know, probably an hour before we got on, I had reposted on Instagram the conversation that I had with Little Caesar about this specific moment, you know, the I'm a bad boy, because Caesar is also in the picture.
Of
and
course,
I ran into him in 2019, and I had never met him before. I mean, sort of in, was it 1993, but I didn't really meet him. But in 2019, I happened to have the print with me, which was bizarre in itself. And then later that evening, I ran into him and we had a conversation talking about the photo. So I had my iPhone and literally I videotaped our entire conversation of him talking about the picture, talking about that night, talking about their friendship. So I re-edited it and cleaned it up. And I just posted it to my Instagram Reels today because earlier in the week, Rock the Bells, they had posted, some guy was talking about this exact moment, and Rock the Bells on their social media platform, you know, ran the story of this guy talking about that actual moment. So I figured I'd give it, you know, a wave of time for it to die down. So today I posted the picture, or posted the video of me and C's talking about it, to give people or a more intimate perspective of what that moment was like without interjecting myself into it.
Of course. Yeah. And you know, like that's another thing I thought about a lot while reading this book. Just like I mean, like, this is a book. Of course, it's your story. You know, like, you took these pictures, and of course, there's so many that are attached to like little anecdotes, and there's also plenty that aren't attached, or at least they don't have stories in the book. And there's a couple I want to ask about, because there's some that really pique my interest. But
Totally,
you know, like that's another thing. Is just like, where do you insert yourself? Like, just like knowing where to insert yourself as like the intermediary, almost like, you know, it's like, when is it appropriate for me to offer my perspective on this? When is it not appropriate for me to offer my perspective on this? How much of myself should I include in this? But like, you guys had that conversation, and it's important for you to be able to like offer that up, and for people to recognize like, oh yeah, you've got this, you had this experience. it's a constant tug of war that I find myself in a lot. Like like you're like helping tell some, like I help tell people stories through a podcast and through
Right.
writing. You do it through pictures, and it can be difficult sometimes. Like I know I second guess myself a lot, where it's like, should I be talking in first person pronouns right now?
Right. Yeah.
Like I get that a lot. So, and you're like reading the book made me think about that a lot as a fellow orator, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. No, I feel like as a photographer, especially talking from a historical perspective,
Yeah.
back then I wasn't down with anyone. I wasn't a part of a crew. I wasn't anything. I was just the fly on the wall T. Eric Monroe, who took pictures, who started with Thrasher and freelanced here, sent freelance work here. Like I did my rounds, if you would, ended at the source.
Yeah.
I was there for a little bit, but even with that, like I wasn't as impactful. And again, that's a good thing that I wasn't very impactful. I did my time at the source, but I knew it wasn't for me. So I left and went to do freelance again. And then I sort of just took off. And like me leaving hip hop and leaving photography and for so many years, and it did make a bit of difference. It went on without me, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then
of course.
looking back at the work and the time that I covered and the moments that I captured from a perspective of not being, oh, this is a photographer who was only known for working with Columbia Records, only working with Loud Records, only working with, no, like it was
right.
free. I was a freelancer. I was not even a gun for hire because no one was really hiring me. I just did it off of the strength of let me try. So my historical perspective has to also be that independent voice of either this is how I did it, this is what these moments were like, because I wasn't down with this person or this person. No one gave me easy access because I was associated with. It was a total pure perspective of
Absolutely.
This is what the moments were like. This is what it's like being around these people, because you're no one. Like people aren't guarded because you're so associated with this or so associated with that. Like I'm just
right.
this innocent, suburban weirdo looking kid. I've been called so many interesting names coming back, because
of course,
I was so,
yeah.
I don't want to say so unique, but I wasn't the typical New York kid by any means, and I wasn't the typical skater kid by any means. I was some kind of mishmash of all these things, and just happened to be around kind of thing, where now it all makes sense, if you would, But again, it's telling my independent perspective of how I saw hip hop, of how I worked alongside or watched these artists do what they were doing, and seeing these moments that I saw from this very innocent, naive eyes and perspective, because I didn't know anything different. I didn't know of the people's background of how much they might have been a dangerous person or their background as this or the background. I didn't know all this stuff because I didn't educate myself about the artists necessarily that was taking pictures of, and I didn't know their pedigree as this person, this thing. I'm glad I didn't know, because it would have fogged or blurred my potential perspective of the moments that I was able to pull from it.
Yeah, I get you. Like objectivity, or like so-called objectivity, because I don't really think objectivity exists. That's an important thing to consider, like when telling a story, especially like when like taking like a photograph, because like like these are just these are icons that we all love and adore, but they are people at the end of the day, and you don't want to get too caught up in idol worship.
Right.
Like once again, that's something I think about a lot as like somebody who has relationships with artists, but like like I'm also like a critic. Like I don't hold my tongue about stuff I don't like. So it's like that's like a really perilous tightrope to walk sometimes. I've been praised, I've been yelled at, but like it's I try to I try to move as ethically as possible when it comes to a lot of things. And like you talking about like not having affiliations. It made me think of this story where I interviewed Denzel Curry for Pitchfork when I used to work at Pitchfork.
Nice.
And he didn't know who I was before I got there. I went to Electric Lady Studios. We all know what Electric Lady is. Now one of the most famous recording studios on planet Earth. I went, Denzel's manager brought me down to meet him, and he's at the console, and he's like, oh, my man Mark, shout out to Mark. we're birthday twins too. That's good people.
Oh, right on.
But fucking, he introduces me to. He's like, "Hey Zell, this is," and before he can even say my name, he knew somebody from Pitchfork was coming, but he didn't know what I looked like.
Right.
So he sees me and he immediately jumps out of his chair and goes, "Oh shit, you black!" And he runs over and gives me a hug. Just like stuff like that is
Right.
just like those like those moments are, like just like having that affiliation I had with that site,
right,
and just like having his like completely upending his expectations like that
totally
was pretty fun.
No, that's always a good. That is a good thing. And even on a fast forward perspective of even when I left photography and started an amateur skateboard league and produced events or whatever, or even I remember, for the most part, I always stayed behind the scenes, and all my communication was by phone or email. And I'm very professional in terms of how I handle and manage events and producing or whatever. And I often, would go to skate parks, do a 2-day event, of events, and seeing the look of the skate park owner's face, come to find out that I was the one that's been coordinating it, and I'm the one who's been doing all these events and getting all this praise, but my face was never associated with it. It was just the name of the company. It was the events that I was doing and the momentum that it was gaining. It had nothing to do with my face. It had to do with my love and knowledge of what was necessary to produce these great events for these kids. It wasn't about Tierra Monroe. It was about the Beast of the East contest series, or about the Grom series for the little kids, and and then all the sponsors that we got involved. Like, that's what it was about. And like, it was sticker shock to find out, I'm the one coordinating it. Yeah, get over it. We got an event to run. You know what I mean? I never got pushback, but you always saw the sticker shock when I came in the building.
That's amazing. Like just, like that's part of the reason why I don't like showing my face for this podcast, because it's not about, like, it's about me, but it's not about me. Like we're like, it's a conversation between two people or sometimes more people, but it's like I'm giving people a chance to come on and talk about it. It's not about me. I don't want this to be about me. I'm just
and kind of like with my work, the work isn't about, it is my work, but it's not about me in many ways. It's about the era of the 90s that I experienced, and so many of what we call legends or icons now, some 20 to 30 years later. It's about looking back on their starts of their career when they were hungry at their, I want to say, at their purest stage before they got to the second album, and like they really got their identity crafted, if you would.
Absolutely. So like before we move on to like the actual construction of the book, there were a handful of photos in here that didn't have stories attached that I wanted to ask about one time.
Absolutely.
And the first one was this Nas bucket hat pic from '94. I was really intrigued by this photo. So talk to me a little, like whatever you can remember. Obviously, no pressure. If you want to pass, we can.
No. I'll share it. It's all about. That's what this moment is for. Is about sharing. So all the images in the book of Nas are all from the same session. Just one was black and white. Other one was color. He has the same outfit on, minus the bucket hat. It was a Guess jean outfit that was like tan colored. So the black and white shots were taken. We were on 53rd and Madison Avenue on 53rd Street, and there was a park, like one of those little city parks that you can walk in and sit down, and now it's like a little coffee spot area. I was there a couple months ago just to look back at the space. So as you walk into this little park area, there's these green metal gates that sort of close at night, and they lock it, and then they open during the day. So the gates were open behind him. So the shots of him in the bucket hat were taken from a sort of lower perspective, where he was in front of the green metal gates that open and close. So that's why you got those lines behind him when the light hits it a specific way. And it was just the perspective of me looking at him, sort of looking up and off, just Nas being, not like I don't know, like Nas being Nas. So for me, it's just it's a perspective shot of me watching him look off and looking sort of deep into him from a couple different perspectives. So whether it was the bucket hat shot or it was the tall and strong shot, those were the same moments outside of that park area by those gates, if you would.
Right.
And then the other side of that shoot, where I've captured him in color, we walked into the park, and as you walked into the park, on the right hand side, going long ways, was this giant wall. It was part of the old Berlin Wall that was in Berlin, Germany, that separated East Berlin or East Germany from West Germany. So it was called the Berlin Wall, and it had all this beautiful European graffiti on it. So I photographed Nas in front of that wall. So that's why when you look at the graffiti in the pictures, it's not typical New York or even American graffiti. It was European graffiti that was a part of that wall, and it had such beautiful colors that worked well with his skin complexion and the outfit that he wore.
Yeah, I could tell you took a lot of time to think about the composition and just like the way it looked and felt. Like that was just so cool to me to see that, like to see Nas portrayed in that way. And there was another, and then like a little later in the book, there's this one kind of singular picture of like Big L just kind of like giving like a little finger gun
Right.
motion from '93. So talk to me a little bit about that one.
That was in 19 it was a 1993. It was a, they used to have, maybe they still have them, they used to have these things called press days at record labels, where some of the new artists that they had coming out that they were, you know, pitching to the independent press. So it gave
Right.
the independent press a moment of time to come and meet the artist, talk to the, where the artist could talk to the press person about their new project and what they were working on. So I was sort of working the room, and I remember first I saw the guys from the Fugees were there, like Wyclef and Prize, and I knew them from a few other action moments at Columbia Records, and being that they were from Jersey, we sort of had a Jersey connection. And then working around the room, like Big L was there with his whole crew or whatever, and I didn't really know who Big L was. I just thought he was an interesting dude, and he sort of just gave me a couple of hand gestures, like the cool guy kind of hand gestures. And then I got a shot of him with his crew that was with him at the moment. But it was just purely just look at it again, not knowing, but by not knowing someone, what is it that if you're going to photograph someone, just getting a moment to really look at them, lining up the shot and taking the shot, and like that's all you have to work off of, because I didn't know at the time he was Big L. I didn't know his who he was going to be, or who he was at the time. It's purely looking at your subject, no matter who they are. If you're blindly put into a situation where it's you as a photographer and X, Y, Z as a subject, and you're given 30 minutes to photograph this person, not knowing anything about them,
Right.
what is it that you have to work from? It's the energy they're giving off, their tones. Maybe there's something in their feature, like you work sort of not completely blindly, but you just work with whatever your subject is, and then come to find out later this is famous person XYZ, like, and then oh my god, I photographed XYZ. I feel like a lot of it would be interesting if photographers were giving these moments where these quote unquote soon to be famous people, but they didn't know who they were given these missions just to go and photograph someone based on what it is that you have in front of you to work from.
Right. Yeah. And there's another section in the book where you mentioned meeting Guru for the first time and just kind of like showing up early and taking some time to talk. And you're like, oh, can I take some photos? And he's just like, yeah, cool. And then of course, like y'all kind of develop a relationship over those few years. And, like I'm like, it seems like it was like pretty casual. It's not like y'all were like super close, but like he at least knew who you were and saw you and would be like, oh, hey, it's my man T. Eric,
Exactly.
But like it was like seeing that in that first or at least in the earliest photo shoot you did with Guru, and hearing you kind of like talk about that in the book was really cool for me. Somebody else in this book who's kind of singular and on their own that I wish we had gotten more insight into was Bootsy Collins. Like this P-Funk Fingers photo from '96 was super ill. So talk to me about shooting with Bootsy, or I call him Bootsy. And
same thing. So the shot of Bootsy came from 1996. It was an afternoon. It was again one of these press days where I think it might have been Epic Records, because Parliament Funkadelic was coming out with a new record. I think it was on Epic Records, and then during the summer they were playing Central Park Summer Stage. So Epic Records had a handful of independent writers and photographers that they shipped from New York City to, I think it was like I'll just say Woodstock, New York, somewhere upstate New York, to watch Parliament Funkadelic rehearse for the afternoon. And then they also had De La Soul there because they were going to do Me, Myself, and I, because De La samples the song Knee Deep by Parliament Funkadelic. So they were going to do the Knee Deep song into, Me, Myself, and I, and then back to the song Knee Deep. But that afternoon of, we first got into wherever this area was where they were having the press day. And for me, automatically, like, there was something about Bootsy Collins just being such a theatrical looking person that made me instantly want to go to him and like take pictures of him. And of course, Bootsy, being the character that is Bootsy Collins, baby, he's going to give you the P-Funk fingers. He's going to show you his gold teeth. He's going to, show you his sunglasses, his hat. He's going to give you a lot to work from. So I took, I don't know, maybe 6 frames of Bootsy just being Bootsy of just, like from mid torso to the top of his head, like just Bootsy being silly Bootsy. And he's just super fun, beautiful, nice guy. And then I got photos of George Clinton, Bootsy, and Bernie Worrell, who were sort of like the core of Parliament Funkadelic. I got shots of them by themselves. And then I got shots of De La Soul and Parliament Funkadelic all together that afternoon. But it was just a cool day. And then even later during that afternoon, we were in the secondary room where they had all the band set up and they were doing rehearsals. And I remember just taking random pictures of that space and looking back at it. There was a keyboard guy. There was something interesting about him. And I remember I got 3 shots of this guy just on keyboards, just getting himself together. Fast forward when Amp Fiddler, who was responsible for introducing Jay Dilla to A Tribe Called Quest, I remember when Amp Fiddler died, I'm like, I think I have pictures of this guy, and I'm going through my head where, and I remember potentially taking pictures of him during the Parliament Funkadelic rehearsal. So I went back through my negatives or whatever, and sure enough, I had thankfully months prior, I gotten all the negative scans. So I went to my hard drive and I'm going through all the shots, and sure enough, there's 3 pictures of Amp Fiddler on his keyboard during the P-Funk or Parliament Funkadelic rehearsal from the summer of 1996.
My God, like that's yeah. I mean, like, because like that's so different because of course, like Bootsy Collins is an icon already at this point.
Right.
And it stood out to me because he's like the only person in there who had already been like established at that point. So of course, like of course, everybody knows Parliament Funkadelic and Bootsy Collins at this point. So it's like like I imagine it was a little different, just doing like it was a little. I imagine it was a little different taking photos of somebody who was like, oh my God, this is Bootsy Collins,
Well, I mean, for me, I didn't have a historical perspective of who Bootsy was. I feel like he just, to me, there was a character about him that attracted me to him. Like I didn't really know much about Parliament Funk. I didn't have enough historical reference material to know who P-Funk was. Like, sure, I knew a couple songs, but I wasn't like, oh my God, I didn't have enough historical perspective. And again, for me, it was just looking at this character of a person. That's what drew me to Bootsy Collins, that's why I have more pictures of him than I do of necessarily Bernie Worrell, or more pictures of him than I do of George Clinton. It was something about his character perspective that just drew me into him.
Yeah, he's such a character, like he's such a character. Like you already said it before, but like that, like how how could you not be enraptured with somebody like that,
Right.
And then another one that really caught me, like fellow Jerseyan, I see this Queen Latifah photo.
Yes.
And like with her on the motorcycle. I'm not I don't think you put the year in there, but like
so it was summer of 1993.
That's beautiful. So talk to me, because I mean, like at this point, like Latifah's still making like she's still making music, but like the native tongues as we knew it is kind of starting to dissolve a little bit, and like they're kind of moving in different directions. So like talk to me about working with like Queen Latifah and like what that day was like.
So that day, I don't remember exactly what the whole day was, but it was some kind of hip hop show. I think it was either at the Meadowlands or the parking lot of the Meadowlands. It was something that would happen at the Meadowlands. I don't remember the full show, but I remember it was Queen Latifah, House of Pain, Cypress Hill, Das Effects, Black Sheep, and somebody else. But the shot of Queen Latifah was her on her motorcycle, and I remember just walking around, and like she was getting ready to go on stage, and like she's sitting on her motorcycle, just being like the queen badassness, you know what I mean? So it was one of those moments where I had to get a shot of her on her motorcycle. There was something about it that I just had to get a shot of her on her motorcycle, because there was another shot I have of her from the same night, sitting on someone's car hood or whatever, and like she's very royal in her stature. but it was something that was just beautiful and cool and cheeky about her smiling on being on her motorcycle, getting ready to go on stage, on her entrance, going up the stage, or the side stage ramp on her motorcycle. So that's what it was. It was really just capturing that moment that you don't get to see every day.
Right. Yeah. It like it almost reminded me of the bit where you were talking about seeing Mos Def and Talib Kweli right before they were about to go on stage, and you're just like,
Right.
"Hi, can I get a quick photo?" And they were like,
Right.
"Hey, you," and like just kind of like there's really something magical about catching somebody right before they go on. It's like right before they go on stage and right after they go on stage. Like
Right.
those two moments are so. Those are such like volatile, but also like beautiful moments of like, like just like the nerves and anxiety, or like maybe not even nerves and anxiety, but just like the general, just checking the temperature with somebody before they go on.
Right.
It's just like just being there when they're about to do the thing is really cool.
Yeah, and there's a even bigger story that I come to find out about that moment of Talib Kweli and Mos Def, and this is like something again I found out, and I think it was fall 2019 when I was at the Blue Note where Mos Def and Talib were performing with Robert Glasper, and
Right.
Like I think it was after the show or pre-show or something. I happened to have a bunch of pictures with me, and I hadn't seen Mos Def since 1998. But prior to that, like I would see him every so often hanging out with De La Soul when he wasn't an artist yet. He was just friends with De La Soul, hanging out all the time. So make jokes and hang out with him or whatever. But fast forward the night in 2019 when I showed Mos Def that picture because he had never seen it before. And then I also showed Talib because it was in my first book. I made like 3 books before I made the collector's edition. And I remember showing the picture and then showing Talib the book. And he's like, "Do you know the significance or relevance of this moment?" I was just like, "Yeah, you're about to go on stage." He's like, "No, there's a bigger story behind it." So he breaks it down, and I have the reel on my Instagram reels where I have the whole video. But fast forward, Talib Kweli tells me that they were actually in Europe on tour at the time in '98, and they promised Crazy Legs that they would come and do Rock City as a fundraiser.
Wow.
So they had to fly themselves from Europe back to the Bronx just to do Rock City, and then fly back on tour in Europe. So there's a bigger, longer story that goes into it. So I got Talib's perspective on my Instagram reel when he's talking about that specific moment because they had just gotten out of their car, got ready to go on stage, and then after performing, got back in their car service, went back to the airport, and flew back to Europe. And then I don't know if I released the full version of it, but then Mos Def has a similar story. I don't think I've ever actually released it on Instagram, where he talks about, them flying over, that having made a promise, coming back to the States, him knowing exactly what was in his bag, what he was lit. Like he knew every bit of moment of that moment. And it blew me away that to me, this moment of Mos Def and Talib was just beautiful because it was them very backpacker-ish about to go on a mission. But in actuality, this was a very specific moment of time for them.
Yeah, like and it's like you having this one moment of just like, hey, let me get this picture, and just like have it really just that's the epitome of a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Literally, like, and finding out the backstory on so many moments, it sort of not blows me away, but I'm grateful that people can add on to the stories.
Right. Yeah. Because like once again, like this is about more than just you.
Yes.
Like this is like these aren't just like subjects. These are like people who have their own obligations and responsibilities, and like you can see all like you can see all of that in a picture. So like
right.
that's one of the things I've always loved about photography. So I mean, like you've already mentioned a few times that this is the collector's edition that I'm holding in my hands, but
yes.
And like there's been other versions of this book. So, like considering that you had been away from this for a while and decided to go through your archives and release these to the public, talk to me about not even the collector's edition, but just like when did you first start putting this book together? And like you mentioned earlier, like the team and the people who can like do things that you necessarily can't. So like talk to me about, like, you don't have to tell me like everything, but like just like walk me through bringing this book to life.
Sure. So trying to think what year it was. So initially having all this material, all these photos, I knew I had something within the bins of the few bins that I had that had all my prints and slide. I knew there was something there, meaning that it wasn't just this singular. For many years, I just thought of it as, the years of 92 to 98. It was a fun years. I captured a bunch of stuff. I had a fun time at it. And then I walked away from it and went on to do skateboard events and event production and work with this.
Right.
But it was a certain point where I knew I had to look back at the material and figure out what it was that I had. So once I sorted the material from sort of A to Z in terms of subject matter, I remember talking with Dave Carney, who he was one of the big editors for Big Brother magazine, and he's written for a lot of other publications. He was working on a piece for Monster Children magazine. So I just shared with him a bunch of Google files of all these scans that I did of all these different people or whatever. And then he went through all these Google Docs looking at the images, and he pulled out a bunch, and he wrote a little piece about me or whatever. And I was like, there has to be something here. So fast forward, I started, posting little by little pictures on Instagram or whatever, and then just to share some of the moments that I had scanned and I had captured in the 90s. And then over time, what ended up happening is, based on what got the most traction, whether it was likes or comments or whatever, I would utilize those images to figure out, okay, let's first work with these 30 or 40 images and create a simple book out of it. We called volume 1 at the time, and it was based on basically just the stuff that I use on Instagram in terms of cataloging material. And then I put, some essays along with it to sort of tell the story. And then I did a volume 2 with the next batch of images that I had already posted on Instagram over a time period. And then a volume 3, and I do the same formula method of just writing essays, sharing the picture. And then at a certain point, after doing those 3 volumes, I took a sort of creative leap and made this first version of a collector's edition called the Gold Book, where it was a little bit more material. It was a high-end quality $300 art book, and I only made 100 of them, and I put that on the market. And then a few years after that, I wanted to redo the collector's edition to make it available for everyone that wasn't at $300, if you would. So what I did was I worked with a new team of people. This one guy, Nico, I call him Nico Pepsi Cola, but Nico and his partner, Pablo, they're both Italian book designer, or just designers, period. And this Pablo is out of Italy, and he's designed for fashioning people, but making their print, handheld, whether it's a catalog, whatever. So he understood print on a completely different level and how you should lay things out to make it easy on the eye in terms of font, color choice. He just came from a completely different perspective, and he loves hip hop. So for him, this was a love project, and literally they didn't charge me for it because they wanted to be able to get their hands on it and really make this beautiful piece that the world could really receive or whatever. So I worked with them. They redid the design. We added more essays and more pictures to it, and they just made it very simple and beautiful to hold. And the way that it just sits on a coffee table, or when you hold and look at the book, it just, even the way that the pages fall and where the text starts or where the picture, and they had a perspective and understanding of how a book could potentially look, as a fine art book. And that's what they brought to me, or to everyone, is this very beautiful art book that tells the story of 90s hip hop in a fashion that you don't normally see it in.
Right. Yeah. You just said the $100,000 word, coffee table. Reading this I grew up with my parents would have coffee table books of art from all all different kinds of art and music stuff. One of my favorites I had growing up was this book of we're going back to cartoons again. It's a book of Tex Avery art and concepts, and he wrote, or somebody wrote a bunch of essays about certain eras of Tex Avery's art, and I was always so fascinated by this book. I don't know why my parents had it,
right?
I don't, my parents don't really like cartoons like that, so it was I was always just fascinated by. But obviously, I've read other coffee table books, but the idea of the coffee table book is one that I think is underappreciated is not the right word, but it's just there's an art to a good coffee table book, and I think this one definitely encapsulates it. It's you're holding it in your hand, flipping through it, it's the type of thing that I could read this in bed, but it's the type of thing that you'd want to read on a couch,
right?
Have it to for people to look at and pick up, and that's special. That tactile physical relationship is always you know, like once again, I'm a big proponent of physical media too. So like holding books is a like I don't want to say I can't read digital books, but I have a really difficult time reading. I just have a really difficult time reading stuff that isn't like articles on like a phone or a laptop. Like I can just like I will blow through a book so much quicker if I got that shit in my hand, you know?
Yeah, and it's something about the holding that three-dimensional vehicle of arts transference in your hands, that you're actually slowing down and you're looking into it rather than scrolling through it. You like where you just take your time and look at it, because I feel like with any picture or any medium that's visual, every time you look at it, you pick up something different. You know what I mean? And then over time, you create this collective of imagery based on, you know, what it is that's within that book. And it's also because the book is a very easy read. It tells stories. It tells about a time period. And I remember two things specifically about even just doing the book. I remember like when I did the first smaller versions of the book, a guy telling me that, oh, you know, he's read his daughter some of these stories, you know, as she's going to sleep. And I'm like, yeah, it's a very simple read. There's nothing scary or nothing offensive about it. And then I remember this place I was working at not too long ago, and we had a customer who would always come in. He was a very interesting guy, and he was a music teacher. And like he didn't know my background or whatever. He just knew there was something different about me. Like I shouldn't be working where I'm working. I'm like, yeah, it's just something to do to pay bills. So I started, you know, little by little, as I would see him sharing a little bit about my background, his eyes would open about what, like just it would blow his mind. And then we'd have these very deep conversations because my mother was a teacher, so I understood his perspective of being a teacher, and then also being in the modern age as a teacher, a completely different landscape from, you know, let's say the 80s and early 90s when my mother stopped teaching, versus being in the, you know, 2020s and being a teacher, and like all the different things that you're dealing with as a teacher, but then also as a parent. So we'd have these very deep conversations. And then I remember sort of again telling him a little bit about me as a person, but then I remember one day laying my book on him and it just blew his mind. You know what I mean? He's just like, wait, you did this? I'm like, yeah, again, I'm working here because it's 2 minutes from my house. I'm working here just because it's something to do, just to get me off the couch, you know. And then it gave him a wider perspective of, you know, wait, someone from Central Jersey had all these moments. And he was also worried when he first flipped to it. He's like, is it okay to leave it out for the kids, or is it going to be offensive? No, absolutely, it's not offensive. It's just my story of sharing these moments of this time period. There's nothing to worry about. There's no curses. There's no profanity, because it's hip hop. He expected automatically, like might have to guard. So, but I get it to a degree. But I'm grateful I was able to break down sort of a barrier and share a story. You know, for him to be able to now have new perspective and eyes on other people, if you would. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. You know, it's like that's like that's the other thing. You know, like it's definitely the type of like the coffee table book is the sort of thing that can not necessarily appeal to anybody, but at least kind of like pique anybody's interest and be like, what's this? You know?
Right. Because you can open it and pick it up anywhere and just learn or look at something, you know, and put it back down.
Right.
And again, it's a piece of art. So it's just, you don't have to read it from A to Z. You can go backwards. You might have a thought or idea, and like, it just allows you to explore. And for me, the work that I share in the book and the work even I share on Instagram, it's sort of me just throwing different pieces out there over time. Because I might have an idea, or God forbid somebody passes or some kind of anniversary comes up. If I haven't already shared it, it's going to make me go back into my archive,
right?
You know, whether it's through one of my drives or whatever, or if I have to break out my scanner, I'm like, oh, I have a reference moment to whatever is going on right now in the media, where I could scan that negative or slide and then share it with the rest of the world.
Right. Yeah. And you know, just like talking about this relationship between, you know, like, you know, just like you starting out when you did, and bringing yourself into the era of like sharing things on Instagram.
Right.
Like I'm really, you know, like as someone who documented the culture for a very specific amount of time, and obviously is bringing that perspective to things now when you feel it's appropriate. I'm just like really interested in your thoughts on like how hip hop's visual identity has mutated and evolved over the years, especially given like the handful of things you've done. Like you mentioned the Mark Echo thing you played a hand in for Complex. Like, you know, just like, of course, like photos remain one of the easiest ways to get the feel for anybody, but especially an artist. So just like, you know, like having, you know, like having put this book out, having this relationship with Instagram and Reels, and kind of bringing your perspective into it, and like having worked, you know, like in the modern landscape a tiny bit, like how do you feel about the current landscape in terms of like general photo aesthetics, how the business itself has changed or not changed, like how the photos look, like you know, like how do you feel about the state of rap photography in 2024?
I can't. I don't think that I have enough knowledge to go off of to properly answer, just because I don't follow modern day rap or what's being put out there. You know, I
Right.
avoid a lot of it because my ear can't absorb a lot of it. Like it doesn't appeal to me in so many ways, so I don't listen to it. I don't focus in on it.
So
But with that said, there's been a few opportunities where, you know, people wanted me to photograph this person or that person, and my perspective has been like, in order for me to capture someone, because I'll look at some of the work, whether it's on Instagram or in the book, and say I want that kind of a feel, you know, for X, Y, and Z. My thing is this: I need to spend time around the person, you know, where it's not just going to be, okay, we meet up, blah 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 blah. I take a picture and we go. I
right.
have to spend some kind of time around you. Like I want to watch your routine, like what it is that you do, whether it's in the studio or spending time with your friend. So for me, it gives me a familiarity, but also just so I can see perspective of potentially what I would want to photograph. Like, yeah, even though I said, you know, if you're only given a half hour in front of a person that you don't know, you can capture something. But if I'm photographing someone that's supposed to be popular that I don't know, I want to get choices in the moments I'm about to capture. So I
Right.
want time around the person in order to capture something that's going to be reflective of the way that I capture someone. So, for example, last year when I photographed Mark Echo, I've known Mark since Jesus Christmas. Since the early 90s is the best way of describing it. And I've spent time with him when I left photography and I was doing the skateboarding events. I had my office in his building. So I spent plenty of time around him as a person and on business. So I had spent enough time around him I was comfortable to not interfere with what it is I wanted to bring out, if I
Yeah.
can say it that way. So if I was given an opportunity to capture someone of the modern age, again, I would want to spend some time around them before I even picked up a camera, just so I got to see them, watch them, observe them, to be able to capture something that isn't atypical of what you're going to see of that person. Like one person I would love to spend time around is Cardi B, because
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
met
ask.
her in person somewhere over the last 5 years doing event production. And it's like she had come into the venue like the day before as we were setting up or whatever, and her makeup wasn't done, her hair wasn't done, her nails weren't done. You know, she didn't have an entourage. It was just her and I think maybe her manager. And she walked in. She was this little, I don't know, she's probably 4 foot nothing or whatever. Just this little mousy person, like super duper nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like it was something about her undone that fascinated me. You know what I mean? Because when she's done, she puts on this larger than life character.
Of course,
But
yeah.
to be able to capture something about Cardi B, like yeah, I obviously I wouldn't want to photograph her undone because the public wouldn't be able to absorb that in the right way, if you would.
Of course,
But
I
I would
get what
have
you
her
mean.
lightly done, like not overly, because there's something beautiful, innocent that's somewhere in between the overly done and then undone. Like there's a piece of Cardi B, like I feel like that if the public was given this other choice of her rather than just this sex symbol all the time, that they could gravitate to. I feel like Cardi B could be this media personality if she could learn to act. Like there's so much more I feel like to a person like her that's in this middle ground that I would love to be able to bring out. And there's other artists I'm sure that if I was given this unguarded side and then the super guarded side, to find this medium ground that would be wonderful to share with the general public.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think you know, like Cardi, you know, like Cardi B is special because she's kind of like she's at a level where, you know, she's at a level where she keeps it real, and you know, just like people in the ends can fuck with it, but she can also get up and just like she can just like talk politics when she
Right.
needs to. She can like do, you know, like Cardi's like incredibly multifaceted, and I think
Yes.
that's really fascinating. Just the idea of you know, like I'm always going to be interested in anybody who kind of has like a larger than life persona and just kind of like seeing them off the clock, you know, like
Yes.
not I'm like I always want to see stuff like that. Like that's
Right.
kind of what I like to that's kind of what Real Notes is all about. Like I want to give people an opportunity to kind of cut loose and talk about their influences and kind of show like there's this younger rapper. I'm a big fan of. His name's Navy Blue. He's been making
Okay.
he's a model for Supreme. He runs with like Tyler the Creator and like the Odd Future Boys, particularly like Earl Sweatshirt, if you're
Okay.
familiar. But like Sage is somebody who makes this like heart-wrenchingly emotional music that's like really intense, super duper intimate. Like he you know like he like writes from the heart every time he writes.
Right.
But when I'm talking like he and our episode is bordering on like 2.5 hours, and the
Right.
whole time we're just like goofing off. Like
Right.
he's a goofball. Like he's not like people think of him as this like super solemn, super serious dude, but like he's down to just talk about like video games and just like make jokes. Like he's such a you know like he's just a person. You know like it's just like this like that's one of the reasons why I admire what you did with this book and with your photography and with you know like all the different event stuff that you've thrown is like you understand that at the end of the day these are all just people, you know, like
Yes.
we you know like people you know like people like whether or not we acknowledge it, most people are performing when they're talking to anybody, never
Right.
mind if they're famous or anything. Like we're putting on a version of ourselves that we think is acceptable for the public to consume. And
Correct.
anybody who's willing to let that guard down in any way is somebody who's always going to be super duper fascinating, like whether that's captured in their music or captured in writing or an interview or in a photograph, whatever. You
Right.
know, like that's I think people who take that responsibility have a difficult but really fruitful job ahead of them because that's the stuff that lives, you
Yes.
know, like that's part of the reason why I you know like as a writer and somebody who's super involved in editorial, it just makes me sad to see all these sites shuttering and all these like different places for not just like writers but like photographers and videographers and whoever to
Right.
like you know have their work shown because like that's the stuff that lives on, you know, like that's you know like the stuff that's in this book, the stuff that's in stuff like The Source and Double XL and the early days of Complex and you know like Scratch Magazine, shout out to my mentor Jerry Barrow, like all like stuff like that, like like that stuff lives, that
Yes.
stuff persists. Like when we all die, that stuff's still here.
Right.
So, you know, anybody who's willing to use that medium to kind of flesh out a person's persona and bring it back to like this is a person at the
Right.
end of the day is like I'm always attuned to that. I'm always gonna tap in with that. So, you know, like that's why rare and unseen moments of 90s hip hop is something that I'm proud to put on my coffee table that I totally have. I don't have a
Right.
coffee table, but you know, like
No, I
I
know what
just
you're
like,
saying.
yeah.
No, it's I feel like again, like if the opportunity presents its were to present itself in the right parameters, kind of like when I photographed Mark Echo, I needed certain parameters to be there in order for me to do it right. And
Right.
they were, and it allowed me, having not photographed a person in a portraiture setting in years, to be comfortable enough to capture the right moment, the right feeling, the right essence. Because even, for example, back in I think it was the beginning of August or whatever was Mark's birthday, or the end of August, I don't remember. But on my Instagram, I shared this one picture that they didn't use, and it was a very innocent moment of Mark at his drawing table, and he's drawing this kid in a rhino outfit, you know, and it was just the joy that's coming out of his face, like I know that version of Mark. Like like the average person doesn't get to see this very innocent, joyful, almost like giddy little kid drawing. And,
Absolutely.
and when I posted on
Absolutely.
Instagram, I told the story of, I remember being around Mark when he was he made this one t-shirt design based on the Stretch and Bobbito radio show that came on WKCR. And
Uh-huh. Yeah.
back then
Classic.
it was a picture of this kid being up late at night, sort of like almost asleep, but pressing the record and play button on the tape player to record the Stretch and Bob Beto show. And I remember him actually illustrating that on the computer, and it was just like joyful kid geekiness that I remember seeing Mark just at the drawing table draw it, an illustrator, but I saw that same youthful, geeky, almost like mad scientist look in his eyes. And that's what I shared on Instagram of Mark at his drawing table, painting this beautiful picture of this kid in this rhino outfit. Like, you don't often get to see these very innocent moments or these very rarely shared insider moments of a person like really letting their guard down, but also allowing their creative flow to be captured. But thankfully, I was comfortable enough and slow down enough to recognize that moment when I actually captured it. And all the essence of that image that you can see on Instagram, it's a beautiful side of Mark that everyone doesn't necessarily get to see personally, but I'm grateful that I was able to capture it and share it. And it reminded me of like, yeah, you still have it. You know what I mean? It was one of those reflective moments of like, you haven't lost it. Like when you slow down and you really allow yourself to capture the moment that is, you'll always be able to capture that pure, beautiful experience moment that you get to share with others that often others don't get to experience themselves.
Right. That's like just knowing that you're capable of doing that for somebody is that you're still capable of doing that for somebody is incredible. I have one more story I want to share before we formally wrap this up. There's this I haven't talked about this on the podcast yet or like really publicly outside of writing, so I figured this would be the best time to do it. The rapper Ka, I don't know if you're familiar with Ka from Brownsville. He was an incredible, he passed away about 2 weeks ago. He was 52 years old. He was so he started out as a rapper in the 90s. He retired and he became an FDNY fire captain. He was a first responder. He was a first responder at 9/11. Like, he was a superhero. Like, so like, but like while he was doing all of that stuff, he in the late 2000s decided that he wanted to start rapping again, and he started putting all these he put out about 10 projects, 11 projects, excuse me, in his lifetime. He's one of my favorite rappers ever. He's a model of not just like independent success and being able to do it all on your own, like because like in the sense of like he wasn't signed to a label. He shipped all the records that people bought himself. He produced most of his stuff on his own. Like he worked with like a really tight knit circle of people. But like I bring that up because he was somebody I came to know because he would do pop-ups where he would just like show up like before I started going, he would show up outside of where Fat Beats used to be in the city, and he would just sell records out his trunk. Wow. Like he started to like build a relationship with people. Like he was on one of Jizz's albums. I forget. I think it was on the album Pro Tools. He was on a song called Firehouse. So like he kind of like rolled with those types of people.
Oh, and wow, like, Firehouse, that's good.
Yeah. So he's like, yeah, right. So like I came to know Ka because I went to some of the pop-ups. He put out this album called Honor Killed the Samurai that I loved, and I was like, I gotta meet this guy. So like I went to the pop-up, and you would imagine that somebody you just grab your record, say hey for 10 seconds, get a picture and a pound, and you leave. This guy took the opportunity to talk to not just me, but every person who showed up for at least 5-10 minutes. He had these full-blown conversations with everybody, asked about their life, what their favorite music is, what their favorite song on his record was. Like we met and we connected, and the only way you could see him, because he wasn't outside, he didn't do shows, he would put out a record, do a pop-up, and then go back into his hole.
Wow.
So like the only way you could see this guy is if you were lucky enough to be in New York or in the area when he did a pop-up. Right. So I would go to the pop-ups, and then he would answer emails too. Like there's been stories, people sharing like, oh, like I'm from Amsterdam and I emailed him out of the blue and he responded. Like he's one of those people.
Right.
So like this is somebody that I like, like I got to know him a little bit. I wrote about him quite a few times. And then a couple weekends ago, I get a phone call from somebody in his camp that he died.
Oh shit! Because I saw everyone posting about it, but I never met him or knew him. But and it was just one of those random things where the how do I say it? I'm grateful for social media because I have such an interesting cross section of friends, followers, people I follow, the whole nine, where I'm like, how do I not know this person? Like, it was one of those moments, you know, and it's kind of like, even when Clark Kent just passed, like, the only
rest in peace to fucking DJ Clark Kent, man.
which is crazy, because even Clark Kent, like, I knew of him. I never spent any time around him, and the only shots that I have of him are being a DJ for Biggie. But I didn't want to do one of these things where, I'm going to go dig up the file, scan. That would be too disrespectful in many ways. So I just wasn't going to do it. But yeah, I didn't know who dude was, but I knew everyone that I knew him. So it was one of those moments where I'm like, how do I not know this guy? But you don't necessarily need to know everyone. But it was just, I felt like how it was so heartfelt from so many people that I really respect and know, that I almost felt bad that I didn't know who dude was.
Yeah, he was a special one, and I bring it up because I went to the last pop-up he did before he passed, and it was like 2 weeks before he died.
Oh shit!
Like none of us knew. I mean, of course, like you don't know that's gonna be the last time,
right?
So like, you know, it's a line out the door and up the street to see him.
Wow.
I waited I went there to buy records and merch for people who weren't in the city. Like I shipped the CD out to India, bro. It was crazy. So like shout out to my man AG, my man Rohan. But so I went there and we met and we reconnected. He had actually reached out to me maybe like a month or so before. Like he like offered to send me his new album, and I had already bought it. So I was like, I already bought it. Like we talked a little bit, and you know, we spoke at the thing. I told him a story about how I felt about his new album. It's called The Thief Next to Jesus. It's incredible. Like go listen to some Ka music. He made incredible music.
Okay.
But you know, I saw him 2 weeks before he died. I got the call from my man Salim Baba, who I love with all my heart. Thank you again, Salim. And I wrote about it. I don't like writing post-death obituary pieces, but like I decided to write about the pop-ups because everybody, like I've written about him so many times. I was like, I'm not even gonna bother like writing about the music. I'm just gonna write about the man and the person at the pop-ups because everybody else has the music shit covered. But like, you know, like, but anyway, like we weren't close. I never went to his house. I didn't know his family, nothing like that. But this was somebody that I had come to know. He gave so much of himself to people when he was outside that I felt like the best way for me to show my appreciation and to explain to people the type of person he was to bring that to life.
Right.
So like I wrote about those pop-up shops and how they kind of help bolster his legend, because like that word legend is thrown around a lot, but he's somebody that I would consider to be a legend, an icon of like you never hear a bad word about bro ever.
Right.
Everybody who knew him loved him. He was really an example that I think everybody like he's a blueprint in a lot of ways. But you know, like just like kind of talking about like you finding yourself comfortable enough around Mark Echo, and like I felt comfortable enough about Ka as not just a musician, but like as a person who was willing to give back to the people who directly supported him.
Right.
That I was like, let me write this. You know, like totally. I wouldn't feel that way about a lot of other people. I've only ever done that one other time for my friend Groggs, who was a rapper in this group called Injury Reserve, who passed away. I also wrote about him when he passed away. But like I don't like to. I get feeling comfortable enough to do something like that, because you shouldn't do a thing like that unless you either get the time or like you have, if you're not passionate about it and you can't really bring it to life in your own way, it's not worth it. You know, like it's like that's why you know, like I would read, you know, like I'll read all the Kyle obituaries I read were beautiful because you could tell these people gave a shit about his music.
Right.
But I was like, I've written about the music so much that I needed to do something different, or else I was just going to be repeating myself.
Totally.
And I felt comfortable. Like people were like, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. And I was like, I'll do this one. Like this one time, I'll do this. Right. So I get exactly where you're coming from. that shit can be really hard. And, you know, like losing an accomplice or a friend in that way is really difficult. So, you know, like
Totally.
love up on your people, man. Like,
Yeah.
please, like while they're here, don't miss opportunities to commiserate and be with your people before they're not here anymore, because they will be gone before you know it. So
Sadly,
I just needed to say that. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's reality and truth. And it's just like, you know, from 90 whatever to now, like,
yeah,
how many people that, you know, took pictures of aren't here, you know what I mean? And it just it just
man,
baffles me. And it's like, even people that we lose, you know, over the last few, like, it just, time is a motherfucker, excuse my language, you know, like, and it's a weird perspective of dealing with in so many ways. But I'm also grateful of what I did capture in the time period that I did, so I could still share it where it's not it wasn't contrived based on a magazine article. It wasn't contrived based on this or based on that. It was just based on my adventures of just wanting to take this adventure into the space that I captured.
Yeah. And, you know, like, I want to say that I appreciate you for doing that and for sharing this stuff with us that you didn't have to share with us.
Oh, I had to. It was eating at me because it wasn't doing me any good. It wasn't. Someone told me early on when I was trying to shape the stuff up, and I didn't truly get the relevance or importance of the 90s because I experienced it firsthand. To me, it was just okay. I'd like to joke where when I left doing photography and started doing the skateboarding events and event production, I never talked about what I did before those events. And many times my response was, you don't talk about the job you just left. You just leave it as it was. You know what I mean? So even fast forward to even modern times, depending on where people have met me in life, you know, during event production or this pieces of event production or whatever, not knowing about this period of the 90s. And again, my thing was like, how do you start a conversation with, oh yeah, I used to photograph this person or that? It becomes from a very boastful, almost egocentrical kind of, so there's no way of really talking about it. You just sort of you don't talk about it, and if anything, you sort of just hedge it on like, oh, are you on Instagram, and just sort of leave it at that. You know what I mean? Because it almost sounds egotistical, like you're trying to brag, but you're not trying to brag. So it's like I had to be educated early on when I was organizing the stuff that people really revere the 90s, Wu-Tang, Tupac, Biggie, from a perspective that I initially didn't understand, or I didn't really understand the level of how people really revered it because I experienced it. But because of understanding people's love and affinity for this era, I had to go back, revisit the material, and give it its respect. Not because of me, but because of how people longed for images of Wu-Tang guys, you know, Diggable Plans, Guru, whoever that these people were, that they really revere as their heroes or whatever, giving them more historical perspective material to have for them, not so much because of or for me, but because Guru still means so much to, you know, John in Idaho, you know, Missy Elliott means so much to, you know, Sean in, you know, Texas, whoever that it is. It needs to reconnect to the fans in a way that I'm just a vehicle for it in many ways. Like I don't listen to the music. I don't look at my picture every day like, oh, I remember that. No, it's not about me. It's reconnecting people with what they have such a love and passion for. Like, and I'm grateful to work as a vehicle because of working as a vehicle, you know, again, working with my boy Nico and Pablo, who designed the books and the way that it created such an elegant way to share the stories. And, you know, whoever knows what the next level of social media is going to be in 10 years from now, I'll be able to share, again, storytelling abilities in another form because I'm open enough and willing enough to share on whatever platforms that's going to connect the next 20-year-old that comes out in 2030 or whatever, you know, and I'm a little bit, but for me, as long as I can keep sharing it, what the material, the stories, so they can connect themselves to the stuff that they're looking for.
100%. You know, I say that all the time too. I'm just a vessel, you know, like, I'm just like, this culture lives through us in all these different levels, and I'm just here to share that. But man, this has been such a great conversation. I feel like we could go for like another 3 hours, but
I appreciate you.
Of course, but to wrap it all up, if your life was a movie, what would it be about?
Oh God, I don't even know. My life was a movie. What would just idea, adventure, try, retry, get bored, new idea, adventure, adventure, try, try, try. Meaning that when I got into photography, it was based on an idea of, oh, this might be something to pursue. Uh, Figuring out, exploring it, the adventure, exploring the possibilities, networking the possibilities. I got bored. Oh, I have an idea about doing an amateur skateboard league and doing something that was different and exploring this territory that doesn't even exist. And then try, 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 and you create a whole action sports league and marketing world around it until there's not enough sponsorship dollars. And you're like, okay, what do I do next? I don't know. I got to do something for money, go wait tables. And then all of a sudden, happen to start answering ads. And then because of all the stuff that you've done for so long, you end up start working at advertising agencies, producing events for them and their big clients. And like you do that until the money runs out. And then you're like, okay, what am I doing in between? Oh, you know what? Let me see what's in this box. There's something in these with these photos or whatever. Figure it out. Social media. Oh, figure out what social media can do for you. Start storytelling on social media. From storytelling on social media to a book. And oh, I have an idea to do this. And before you know it, 4 books are done. And then what's the next adventure? You know, so that's where I'm at right now. It's like I'm not complacent where I'm at. So it's like something else is formulating in the ether. So that's where I'm at right now. It's like, okay, what's the next crazy idea that I'm going to jump on? But this time do it in a more educated fashion.
Yeah, you're an adapter. The movie would be about the movie would be you're not even a chameleon. You just adapt.
Yes,
and that's how it really is adapt or die. And
right.
Man, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, man. This was really enlightening and just like once again, just like as a as a fellow Black suburban kid from Jersey, like it means a lot to be able to I picked up everything you were putting down.
Right
So
on.
just like thank you for taking the time to put this book together. Thank you for the work you did for like really capturing all of this stuff that I hold very dear in Ember, and that I know a lot of other people listening to this do. So just like thank you for taking the time, man.
No, I'm grateful to share with you and your audience. And it's been a lot of years. It's been an interesting journey. That's the best way of saying it, because none of this was pre-planned. None of this was like, oh, I'm gonna go from high school to college and take this major and work for this
Right.
Everything was just organically just done based on passion and what could happen kind of thing. And I'm grateful to share the story and let others know that, follow your passions, go for it. Like there is no failure. Just keep trying and find your tribe that can support you. Find people who can help you take even just one little step to help you in the right direction. For me, a small step was working with someone that I went to high school with as a copy editor. And she was the one that really challenged me to be able to write. I think I write decently well now, but when I first started the whole writing process of writing essays, she just kept working with me, through all the different writing projects to help me get my voice to be able to write, pretty proficiently now to be able to write on any project that I want to write about. But it's just finding people along your path who can help you just raise the bar a little bit more for yourself to become more seasoned and professional. So that way, when you go to help the next person, you already have all these things lined up to tell them, like, hey, you want to publish a book? This is how you do it. You want to do this? This is how you do it. You want to do this? This is how you do it. Like, don't give up. Don't think you have to wait for this pie in the sky deal and it's just going to drop in your lap and everything's going to be hunky dory.
Yeah.
Learn how to do it for yourself, because it's a slower sell in terms of this or that, but what happens is over time you create so much value for yourself as being self-sufficient. So when these bigger opportunities, if they do present themselves, you can match on a different level of those opportunities, where you sort of negotiate at a completely different level, where you can really leverage what it is that they have to bring to you that you can bring to them at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I hope y'all are taking notes on everything he just said, because like, yeah, like build your community so that build your community and build your strengths on your own, so that you're not going to them, they're coming to you, and you can just like say that, man. Like I got nothing else to add. That's
Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far. And shout out to all the black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time. 1.